Hey, welcome back to Well, That's Interesting, the I Guess Anything Goes Now edition. Today is episode 269, JWST discovers an exoplanet so strange, even researchers are speechless. And ancient bees laid eggs in fossilized tooth sockets. My friends, if you've been tuning in the last few weeks, you may have noticed a trend. Discoveries in astronomy and archaeology have been downright nutty lately. For example, back in December, during episode 261, we learned that the International Astronomical Union, a group of astronomers that names objects in our solar system, attempted to outline the criteria for what constitutes a planet. And the universe immediately said no. No, how dare you? A mere 2 years after their meager paperwork, a celestial body named CHA 1107-7626 immediately threw a galactic monkey wrench into their terms and conditions. Although located in Chameleon, a star-forming stellar nursery 700 light-years away, it's not orbiting anything as a planet would. And it's not currently large enough to become a star either. With a mass 5 to 10 times that of Jupiter, it's still well below the 80-plus mass limit needed to form a thick with a Q core stable enough for long-term nuclear energy production. Cha is actually out there alone, hurling through our galaxy, having the time of its life with all of that star-making material, not becoming a star, and not becoming a planet as we know it. And not to give every surprise away here, if you haven't had a listen, that's not even the most astonishing thing about Cha, who at the moment is classified as a free-floating planetary mass object, or a rogue planet. It also dabbles in star-like qualities, including magnetic activity, creating water vapor, and the occasional apocalyptic accretion fit that inhales 6 billion tons of material a second. Then, just a month later, during the first episode of 2026, we learned about a millisecond pulsar, or a type of star, called PSR J10230038. And it is bonkers. It spins over 35,000 times a minute. Part of a binary system, it siphons gas from its neighbor, and it does so in such large quantities that when the material interacts with the magnetic wind created from that vomit-inducing spin, X-rays are produced. Again, not to give all the surprises away here if you haven't had a listen to episode 262, but J10 is only one of 3 known pulsars in the universe who pop off the standard radio waves and X-rays. To put how truly wild this is into perspective, radio waves and X-rays are on total opposite ends of the electromagnetic spectrum, with radio waves at the low-frequency, long wavelength end and X-rays at the high-frequency, short wavelength end. And today, if you combine all the crazy shit I just said into another discovery made by researchers over at the University of Chicago, you'll get the first half of this show. Thanks to the ravishing power of the James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST, the weirdest exoplanet yet has been found. And so much is going on, I don't even know how to properly introduce it. Dubbed PSR J23222650b, this lemon-shaped behemoth the size of Jupiter is part of a binary system that just so happens to be orbiting, you guessed it, a millisecond pulsar. So once again, we have one of those. And this exoplanet, like Cha, isn't acting like a traditional planet. For example, all the average molecules we expect to see on a planet, like water, methane, and carbon dioxide, they're not here. We will meet the team that found 2650b, we will learn how they found it, and the readings that left them staring with stunned silence into space. No pun intended. We will learn of its atmosphere, which has never been seen before. We will scratch our heads as we try to figure out how it could have possibly formed, and how it's surviving a tidally locked orbit a scant 1,000,000 miles from its star/pulsar. For perspective, the Earth is around 100 times that from the Sun. Get ready for too much. Then after the break, girl, we love us a good bee study on this show, from learning about how undertaker bees know when to take away their deceased nestmates, to the importance of older sister bees teaching younger ones how to waggle dance, it feels like we've covered it all. Well, good news. We totally haven't, because these creatures still have many tricks up their bee sleeves. For example, although we humans usually associate bees as colony animals, with thousands of individuals working together as one to increase chances of survival, this may come as a shock. But that is not always the case. In fact, that's the outlier. Around 90 to 95% of bee species are solitary, meaning females build and care for their own nest without a queen or worker caste system. As reported by wildcare.co.uk, they create individual cells in ground burrows or in hollow stems, and they fill it with pollen and nectar for a single egg. So, if you find yourself as a single bee mom in the world with no defenses or support system, you might have to get creative. Or in this case, super fucking hardcore. We will meet Lázaro Vignola Lopez, a postdoctoral researcher at the Field Museum in Chicago, who was searching for fossils in the caves of the Dominican Republic, and we will talk about what he actually found. We will examine skulls of long-lost animals and the substance found inside tooth cavities of their jaws, which suggests the ancient solitary bees at the time used them as nurseries for their eggs. You might be asking why, and when, and how, and which metal mom would do such a thing? I am so glad you asked. We will get into it. In the meantime, hi, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my sociable business goose. To begin, I ask, how many famous odd couples can you name from American pop culture? If we focus on TV series alone, there's more than enough to choose from. Let's see. There's the classic Lucy and Ethel from I Love Lucy, Charlie and Frank from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Let's not forget Buster and Lucille from Arrested Development, and secret lovers Kirk and Spock from Star Trek, the original series. Today, I'm proud to add another dynamic and unexpected duo to the list. And yes, even though the discovery we're about to probe is real life, it feels stranger than fiction, thanks to the personality makeup and relationship between the characters involved. But first, let's meet some of the human team that found them. A potpourri of wonderful nerds, including University of Chicago's Michael Zhang, the principal investigator. Team member Peter Gao of the Carnegie Earth and Planets Laboratory in Washington, D.C. Maya Bolesny, a graduate student at Stanford University in California who worked on modeling the shape of the planet and the geometry of its orbit. Put a wacky pin in this. We will get to it. There's also Roger Romani of Stanford University and the Cavalli Institute for Particle Astrophysics and Cosmology Institute. He is one of the world's preeminent experts on what's sexily called Black Widow systems. We, too, will get into this. And last but not least, the sexily named Professor Jacob Bean of the University of Chicago, graduate student Brandon Park Choi, and Raphael Lucu, who was with the Instituto de Astrofísica de Andalucía. Nailed it. On November 8th, 2024, our septet powerhouse assembled and had a good sit with an additional powerhouse, the James Webb Space Telescope. Now, there are many reasons as to why hot for stellar bodies astronomers would pick JWST as their tool of choice. But in this case, there are two important fun facts. One, as reported in the team's press release, JWST is perched 1 million miles from Earth, and its huge sunshield keeps the instruments cold, which is necessary for conducting observations. Quote, on Earth, lots of things are hot, and that heat really interferes with the observations because it's another source of photons you have to deal with, end quote, explained Zhang. So, no extra pesky photon interference. If you want a clear look at a celestial body, grab yourself JWST as the binoculars. And two, and perhaps the most important for this study, this telescope studies the universe in infrared, meaning additional pesky forms of light and energy don't interfere with readings as well. This delicious combo was exactly what our team needed as an instrument because they had their sights on the odd couple we're all waiting for, PSR J23222650 be. Discovered in 2011 by the Parkes Radio Telescope in Australia, the binary system is more than 2,000 light years from Earth, and if you're a longtime member of the flock, you might be thinking, wait, a binary system found using radio waves? Does that mean one of the pair is a pulsar? If you thought this, yes, and I'm so damn proud of you and myself for being such a good podcaster. As a refresher, though, and as so wonderfully explained by Robert Leah of Space.com, pulsars are born when massive stars at least 10 times the size of our sun exhaust their fuel for nuclear fusion. This results in the star's outer layers and most of its mass being blown away in a supernova explosion. And if you had to listen to episode 262, you'll learn that in mere tenths of a second before that explosion, the star collapses. In every atom, protons and electrons combine into neutrons, and the space between them disappears. What's left behind is a core with an enormous mass crushed down to the width of around 12 to 20 miles. The force is so spectacular that this star, now turned neutron star, begins to spin at horrendous speeds. And another quirk of it, if that neutron star begins to shoot off radio waves and high-energy particles from both of their poles, well, they're classified as pulsars. And don't judge, we've all been there. And plus, it's this quirk that makes studying binary systems, including a pulsar, a breeze with JWST. Those pesky energy bits are invisible to the Webb telescope's infrared vision. Quote, this means scientists can study the additional object in intricate detail across its whole orbit around the pulsar. Normally an extremely difficult task because the stars usually far outshine the objects. This system is unique because we are able to view 2650b illuminated by its host star, but not see the host star at all. So we really get a pristine spectrum. And we can better study the system in more detail than normal. End quote. Explained Maya Belesne, the graduate student who worked on modeling the shape of the object swirling this pulsar and the geometry of its orbit. My friends, it's time to unpin that first pin and dive into the first readings the team was finally able to gather since 2011 when it was discovered. This was worth the wait. Let's get into it. As reported by Jonathan O'Callaghan of the New York Times, this object's equatorial diameter is about 38% wider than its polar diameter. So basically, it looks like a lemon if you're into fruit, or an American football if you're into sports. This odd shape is thanks to its scant distance from a pulsar that's the mass of our sun, but the size of Manhattan. At a distance of only 1 million miles, that condensed mass pulls at 2650b's waistline and does not let go. It's tidally locked, meaning one side is doomed to face radiation for its entire existence, and the other side is in complete darkness. This all leads us to orbit time, temperature, and finally, atmospheric makeup. And stick with me because it's when we talk about the atmosphere that's when things get really insane. Although our lemon football has the mass of Jupiter, it's a goddamn plaything for this pulsar. One full orbit is just under 8 hours. The day side has a maximum temperature of 3,700 degrees Fahrenheit, while the night side has a minimum temperature of 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. And baby girl, if you think that's crazy, it is. But not for the reasons you may be thinking. Now, the title of today's episode says that these beautiful nerds found an exoplanet in this binary system, and yes, that's true, as of the release of this episode. 2650b's official classification is an exoplanet, but that's super up in the air right now. That's just the easiest thing to call it, as the proper label just doesn't exist yet. Here's what I mean. Actually, scratch that. Let's have Zhang explain. From an interview with science.nasa.gov, quote, instead of finding the normal molecules we expect to see on an exoplanet, like water, methane, and carbon dioxide, we saw molecular carbon, specifically C3 and C2, end quote. The article goes on to say molecular carbon is very unusual because at these temperatures, if there are any other types of atoms in the atmosphere, carbon will bind to them. molecular carbon is only dominant if there is almost no oxygen or nitrogen. Out of the approximately 150 planets that astronomers have studied inside and outside the solar system, no others have any detectable molecular carbon. So my molecular business goose, this exoplanet lacks the planetary basics: hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. It's a gas giant composed of helium and carbon. So much carbon that 1, it's something we've never seen before, and 2, the team believes at its crushed core, that carbon is squeezed into diamonds. Now it sounds like our blinged out lemon football Jupiter would be shiny, but no, it's not. It's most likely a red fucking cloudy mess as its outermost layers are dust and soot-like particles getting rammed by radiation. So, is this a planet? No, not really, because the composition is basically the complete opposite of any planet we know, but thanks to its low mass and its orbiting a star, 2 of the criteria needed by the International Astronomical Union, it could be... ? We also can't go as far as to call it a star either. As Zhang told Robert Leah of Science.com, quote, "Probably not, because nuclear physics does not make pure carbon. It's very hard to imagine how you get this extremely carbon-enriched composition. It seems to rule out every known formation mechanism." End quote. So, what the fuck do we do now, huh? Enter team member Roger Romani. Remember him? One of the world's preeminent experts on what's sexily called Black Widow systems. Oh, and Peter Gao of the Carnegie Earth and Planets Laboratory in Washington, D.C. Yeah, he walked into the room too. Hi, Peter. Together, it's time to unpin that provocative pin. Black Widow systems are binary systems where a pulsar steals material from its neighbor, who is usually another star. The angular momentum and the amount of new material increases the pulsar's spin, all while producing winds that blast the neighbor to hell, eventually destroying it. With Romani's romantic guidance and Peter Gao's, the team believes PSR J2322 2650b could be one of 2 things. 1, this binary system began billions of years ago as 2 stars, and what we're witnessing is the final stage of the Black Widow process. In an astonishing statement to Jonathan O'Callaghan of the New York Times, team member Dr. Gao noted, quote, "We favor the star scenario. This might be the very last moments of such a system, with 2650b on the cusp of being entirely consumed. It would have lost 99.9% of its mass, and we just happened to catch it right at the very end." End quote. But, and big but here, this could also be something in the total opposite direction. On the other hand, as Zhang mentioned in the press release, it could also be an entirely new type of object that we just don't have a name for. A celestial body with a whole new form and atmosphere whose signature move is aptly described by romantic Roger Romani. Quote, "As the pulsar's companion cools down, the mixture of carbon and oxygen in the interior starts to crystallize. Pure carbon crystals float to the top and get mixed into the helium, and that's what we're seeing. But something has to keep the oxygen and nitrogen away, and that's where the mystery comes in. It's nice not to know everything. I'm looking forward to learning about the weirdness of this atmosphere. It's great to have a puzzle to go after." End quote. He enticed in an interview with science.nasa.gov. Jesus, calm down, Romani. We are just getting started, so please, buy it a drink first. After the break, we're leaving an eccentric celestial binary system in the great beyond for a cave system below our feet. But don't be fooled. Inside, we're going to find a whole other world, and its residents were metal as fuck. Stay tuned.
I'm Kelly Dunham. I'm a nurse, educator, comedian, and ex-nun. I served under Mother Teresa, that Mother Teresa. I believe that care is best when it's done in community. And on my podcast, Cared For, I'd really like for us to build that community together. Cared For is a show about caregiving, but in its fullest sense. So we're going to talk about the big stuff like aging and death. Oh, and all that stuff that feels big when we don't have support. Our first episode of Cared For drops on Monday, February 16th. With me, Kelly Dunham. Cared For from PRX and Good Get Productions.
Is there a baby in your life who's about to start solid foods? This can be such a confusing and stressful time. As a mom of 7, I really struggled with spoon feeding my oldest baby. But once I realized that babies can safely feed themselves real, wholesome foods using the principles of baby-led weaning, feeding the rest of my babies became an actually enjoyable experience instead of something that I used to dread. Hi, I'm Katie Ferraro, college nutrition professor and dietitian specializing in baby-led weaning, and I host the Baby-Led Weaning Made Easy podcast. Each week, we cover evidence-based, safe infant feeding practices for parents and caregivers of babies who are 6 to 12 months of age. So, if you're confused by all the conflicting info you hear about starting solid foods, or you want easy, actionable tips on how to safely prep food for your baby, or introduce allergenic foods, or figure out when to drop a milk feed, we cover all that and more, plus interviews with the world's leading feeding experts in 2 new episodes each week. Search Baby-Led Weaning wherever you listen to podcasts, and happy feeding.
And we're back. We are so back. And my friends, I'm going to need you to dust off all the carabiners you strapped to yourself for episode 264. Even though you don't want to, we should talk about the world's largest spider web, and to ignore the unnerving associations attached to these objects. You and I are heading back into a cave. But, good news. There's more than just spiders where we're going. There's also copious amounts of bones from things long dead. So, join me, will you, looking over the shoulder of Lazaro Vignola Lopez, who is now a postdoctoral researcher at the Field Museum in Chicago and lead author of the paper we're crawling into. But at this time, not long ago, he was a student looking for specimens to study as part of his PhD program at the University of Florida and the Florida Museum of Natural History. Being oh so close to the Caribbean island of Hispaniola, Lazaro knew exactly where he and his hot-for-fossil friends should travel to with their own pile of carabiners. Cueva de Mano, one hole of many in the Dominican Republic. And for my fellow geographically challenged Americans who are just getting over the trauma of episode 264 and are wondering why God, why this, and where is this exactly, don't worry, it's going to be great. Just imagine America's Wang, Florida. Thank you. Point and laugh and then move your finger south just a smidge. Here you'll find Cuba. Once again, move your finger down a smidge, but this time a little to the right. Perfect. This dash of an island called Hispaniola is actually split in 2, with Haiti on the left and the Dominican Republic on the right. Close to the border that separates them, and there on the southern coast of the Dominican Republic is hidden a single cave, Cueva de Mano, discovered by the legendary Juan El Monte Milan, curator of paleobiology at the Dominican Republic's Museo Nacional de Historia Natural, and all-around paleobiologist hero who's worked in the area for decades. Lazaro's plan was to literally follow in Juan's footsteps to this area whose name translates to Monkey Cave. But in actuality, Monkey Cave is home to no monkeys at all, but rather is the final resting place of nearly every other animal you can think of. Let's get into it. To do so, please drop whatever life-saving rope you're holding onto right now and pick up your phone. Tap on today's post over at the old socials and you'll see a map of the Dominican Republic and a photo of what looks to be an unkept region of forest. Behind that wall of plants and trees is the entrance to a cave, an entrance that you don't walk into, but one that requires more of a vertical drop. But don't worry, again, here's even more good news. The drop ain't that bad, and you even have a welcome party to meet you. Quote, "The initial descent into the cave isn't too deep. We would tie a rope to the side and then rappel down. If you go in at night, though, you'll see the eyes of tarantulas that live inside. But once you walk through a 10-meter or 30-foot-long tunnel underground, you'll start finding the fossils," end quote, Lazaro explained calmly in his press release to Eureka Alert. Okay, indeed. After sliding your way down the mouth of this cave, tarantulas mentally undress you during a brisk walk to your reward. That being thousands upon thousands of bones layered through time. In that same press release, published last December, the team reports that many of the fossils belonged to rodents, But there were also bones from extinct sloths, reptiles like tortoises, lizards, and crocodiles, and several new species of birds and mammals, amounting to more than 50 different species. This cave, like hundreds throughout the Dominican Republic, were literal death traps. The ground here is made of mostly limestone, a surface that when exposed to rain and moisture year after year eventually gives way to a sinkhole that can collapse under the slightest of weight. Combine this with a dense forest, it's no surprise a tortoise slowly bumbling its way through could miss such a hole, or even create one. In sum, Lazaro and his nerdy team hit the jackpot with Monkey Cave. Dozens of bags filled with material returned with them to Florida, where an even more in-depth examination could take place. So please, sit the fuck down and prepare yourself for just how far this death trap dates back. As reported by Stephanie Pappas of Scientific American, though it's difficult to precisely date the fossils, evidence suggests that the species came from the late Quaternary period, which started 125,000 years ago, and included animals that went extinct more than 4,500 years ago. My friends, Lazaro wanted to find ancient remains, and boy howdy, he found them. So please, give him and the team a round of applause. Yeah, thank you in the back. This alone would be a magnificent find, but this was only the beginning. The team noticed a few, let's just say, peculiar things about some of the remains, specifically those belonging to rodents. One, their skulls were found in piles and smothered in a substance that resembled poop. But 'twas no poop. Quote, "We think that this was a cave where owls lived for many generations, maybe for hundreds or thousands of years. The owls would go out and hunt and then come back to the cave and throw up pellets. We would find fossils of the animals that they ate and fossils from the owls themselves." End quote. Once again, as calmly explained by Lazaro in this mighty press release. So yes, I am glad to inform you that owls puke up compact balls of indigestible parts from their prey, like bones, fur, and feathers that their stomach just can't digest. And they regurgitate these wads hours after eating. The fancy term for this process is called casting, and it's the kind of fact you can bring up to anyone at any time. Feel free. Trust me. This casting brings us to peculiar point number 2, and you need to see it for yourself. Please, drop whatever skull you're holding right now and pick up your phone. After tapping on today's post and swiping past the entrance to our cave, you're going to see a photo of the underside of a rodent's top jaw, and it's labeled Exhibit A. After looking at it, you're probably thinking a few things like, "Jill, there's no teeth here, and what's that small white arrow pointing to? The arrow pointing to an empty cavity." I am so glad you asked, my astute business goose. If you joined us for episode 257, how thumbnails helped rodents spread all over the world, and these queen ants produced 2 different species in absolute first, you may recall that yes, 86% of rodents have thumbs, but rodents have ever-growing teeth with no roots. So, after being consumed and puked out by an owl, and decaying after thousands of years, whatever soft tissue was left behind is now long gone, and the teeth have fallen out. What we're looking at are the empty cavities. And that white arrow, it's pointing to one cavity that stands out against the rest. This one has a smooth surface. And if that gets your paleobiology senses tingling, you're not alone. Quote, "That's not how sediment normally fills in." And I kept seeing it in multiple specimens. I was like, okay, there's something weird here. It reminds me of the wasp nest. End quote, Lazaro recalled in an interview for that press release. My friends, I hope you're still sitting the fuck down because I need you to prepare for this serendipitous moment. As reported by the Field Museum, several years before this exhibition to the Dominican Republic, Lazaro went on a fossil dig in Montana. There, a paleontologist showed him the ancient remains of wasp cocoons, small, thin chambers of dried mud where wasp larvae would metamorphosize into adults. These wasp cocoons looked nearly identical to the smooth, air quotes, dirt lining these cavities. I can only assume Lazzaro's own jaw dropped when he put two and two together. Solitary bees are known to nest in everything from holes in the ground to empty snail shells, as seen in some European and African species. Hell, as reported by Katie Evans of IFL Science, researchers back in 2008 found evidence of bees and insects forming holes in human bones at the necropolis of Pile Mata in Sardinia. So, one must ask, is this possibly the first account of bees making use of pre-existing cavities in animal skulls? Were these badass nurseries for baby bees? Let's find out, shall we? Quote, to better examine the potential nests present in the cave fossils, Vignola Lopez and his colleagues CT scanned the bones, essentially X-raying the specimens from enough angles that they could produce 3D pictures of the compacted dirt inside the tooth sockets without destroying the fossils or disturbing the sediment. End quote from, you guessed it, the press release. And you guessed it, I have a photo of that incredible 3D image over at the socials, and it's listed as Exhibit B. And that B stands for boy howdy. If that doesn't look like a little bundle to hold a baby bee, I don't know what does. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Let's look at the test results. In terms of what that smooth substance was composed of and its age, give me a drum roll, please. Thank you in the back. These nests, the size of pencil erasers, were made of dirt and bee saliva, and some of these nests even contain grains of ancient pollen that mothers had sealed in for their babies to eat upon hatching. This maternal badassery occurred approximately 20,000 years ago, but the reason as to why has not changed a bit. It was all in the name of protection. Laying an egg inside a skull of a deceased animal hides the offspring from predators, and the skull's location, deep within a secure, stable cave, adds additional layers of security. Oh, and speaking of layers, get this. Nests were found in 3 of 4 soil layers, suggesting that the bees used this cave over generations. But not only was the cave returned to over and over, but the very same skulls were reused as well. A number of individual cavities were filled with up to 6 different nests. Yeah. Inherited skulls in an underground inherited cave. You are welcome. Now, as to who this hardcore species was exactly, we may never have an absolute answer. No remains of the bees was preserved, so on one hand, it's possible that they belong to a species that's still alive today. But on the other, many of the animals whose bones were preserved are now extinct. So it's also very possible that the bees that created these unique nests might be from a species that had died out. So, even though we may not have a name for the bee, the team felt that these nests deserve their own taxonomic classification. Osnidum elemanti, after the one and only Juan El Monte Milan, the paleontologist extraordinaire who discovered this very cave. Thanks to his sharp eye, and the sharp eyes of Lazzaro, we have one of the weirdest bee findings yet. The lesson here is to keep your eyes peeled, especially when you're handling something dead. There might be a surprise inside. And thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, following, telling your friends about planets that really aren't planets because they're just so weird. I mean, you could just... You understand it, right? It's just when you're just that weird. Okay, and then bees. Fuck. They're just also weird. Everything is weird. And it's great. And a meaty thanks to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you'll love the other podcasts in this family. And please, stay interesting.